Which famous fictional murderers or violent masterminds could survive a showdown with none other than Dexter Morgan? You know Dex, the unassuming blood spatter expert by day, methodical vigilante killer by night. We're going to see how the most notorious killers might hold up if they ended up on Dexter's table, or if Dexter ended up on theirs. Here's how we're breaking it down. We've got 5 tiers. In Dexter's dreams basically means they're out of Dexter's league. He has almost zero chance of subduing them. Difficult, but maybe. They'd give Dexter a ton of headaches, but with enough time and planning, he could pull it off. 50-50. An even toss-up. Dexter might kill them or might not. Real risk on both sides. Easy job. Dexter would take them out without even breaking a sweat. Are you serious? This is the clown tier. A killer so incompetent or so underprepared that putting them up against Dexter is basically a joke. Got the picture? Perfect. Let's dive right into it. Hannibal's a genius psychiatrist and a cannibal with refined tastes. He's no mindless brute. He's a master manipulator who can outthink practically anyone. If Hannibal caught wind that Dexter was after him, he might calmly invite Dexter over for a special dinner, making him the main course if Dexter's not careful. Plus, he's skilled in combat. He's no stranger to subduing victims or fighting multiple people at once. For Dexter, this is a nightmare scenario. He usually preys on criminals who are sloppy, but Hannibal's the complete opposite. He never leaves loose ends. I see Hannibal catching on to Dexter's patterns and possibly turning the tables. Even if we take away the supervillain aspect, no Batman, no Gotham City, the Joker is pure chaos. Dexter thrives on order and precision. Evidence hidden, kills meticulously planned. The Joker's entire MO is to disrupt that order, to pull out every psychological trick in the book just for the fun of it. Dexter can't predict the Joker's next move because half the time the Joker doesn't even know it himself. He's unpredictable, fearless of consequences, and he'd love to push Dexter's moral code to its breaking point. Sure, Joker's not the best fighter physically, but his unpredictability and clownish mania are huge advantages. He might blow up half a city block just to watch Dexter squirm. That's not a scenario Dexter deals with often. Could Dexter manage it? Maybe. But I'm leaning toward the Joker having the edge. Now I know you might be thinking Joe is just some lovesick stalker with an unsettling library obsession, but let's not sell him short. He's methodical. He's patient. He's good at researching his targets for days or weeks before making a move. And once he's set his sights on someone, he becomes obsessed with them. Talk about being thorough in his approach. Dexter would have to keep his guard up because Joe is relatively good at covering his tracks and building new identities. However, Joe's biggest flaw is getting sloppy and emotional, jealous fits. Dexter would exploit that weakness in no time. Joe's a longer-term project for Dexter. He wouldn't be a one-episode kill, but eventually Joe would crack under Dexter's surveillance. Ghostface is more of a mantle than a single person. But let's assume we're dealing with the iconic brand of killer who taunts their victims over the phone. Typically, Ghostface is not superhuman. They rely on stealth, surprise, and psychological intimidation to corner unsuspecting teenagers. Dexter, however, is no unsuspecting teen. He's a predator who's used to removing threats from the shadows. Ghostface also tends to slip up at times, especially when confronted head-on. The phone taunts might keep Dexter on edge, but I believe that once Dexter learns who's behind the mask, it's game over. Ghostface relies on terror, but Dexter is a terror in his own right. Leatherface is physically huge, brandishing a chainsaw and wearing the faces of his victims. A terrifying presence, no question. But while he's a strong and vicious opponent, he's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Dexter, who has outsmarted bigger men before, would likely try to tranquilize or ambush Leatherface in a carefully planned scenario. The trickiest part is that Leatherface's entire family sometimes gets involved in his kills. But if we're focusing on Leatherface alone, Dexter would be able to craft a cunning plan. A face-to-face confrontation is way too risky for Dexter, though. He'd probably set a trap. With the right planning, Leatherface's brawn wouldn't be enough. Barry is ex-military, a trained marksman, and capable of incredible violence once he's in the zone. Even though he's comedic in his manner sometimes, Barry's lethal skills can't be underestimated. A random ambush from Dexter might fail if Barry's got a gun and the slightest suspicion. But Barry also has a big weak spot. He yearns for a normal life. That emotional struggle often makes him do impulsive things, creating openings for someone like Dexter, who remains detached, at least outwardly, until the moment he strikes. It would be a close cat-and-mouse game. Give Dexter enough time to study Barry's routines and relationships, and he could orchestrate a takedown. Gus is the epitome of calm, collected, and extremely methodical. He runs a criminal empire with the utmost discipline. Dexter has rarely faced criminals who operate with such corporate-level efficiency. Gus's resources are massive. He has henchmen, labs, and a knack for figuring out who his enemies are before they figure him out. Dexter's advantage is working alone. He's a ghost operating behind the scenes. But to kill Gus, Dexter would need an entire season's worth of careful planning, sabotage, infiltration, maybe framing or blackmailing Gus's allies. Gus might suspect a threat but wouldn't know who Dexter is until it's too late. Still, it wouldn't be easy. One wrong move and Gus eliminates him first. Patrick craves attention and kills in bizarre, reckless ways. He's stylish and vain, but not exactly a strategic genius. Dexter would probably track him down through his lavish spending or suspicious transactions. Patrick's kills are random. He once even shot a stranger in public, so he's definitely lacking in the subtlety department. Dexter would do a little research, maybe hack into Patrick's accounts or dig into his coworker rumors and then plan a surprise. Patrick wouldn't see it coming because he's too wrapped up in his own narcissistic daydreams. This is almost a guaranteed bag and tag for Dexter. Jigsaw doesn't directly kill people with his own hands. He sets up intricate traps that force his victims to kill themselves. In a twisted sense. What Jigsaw excels at is manipulation. He studies his target's moral weaknesses and plays elaborate psychological games. Dexter's biggest strength is that he doesn't typically fall for moral guilt trips. He has his code, yes, but he'd see right through Jigsaw's manipulative approach. However, if Dexter ever ended up trapped, he'd have to navigate those deadly puzzles. Is Dexter resourceful enough to escape a Jigsaw trap? Possibly, but he'd need the right tools, knowledge, and a cool head under pressure. If Dexter can avoid being captured in the first place, which is likely given his caution, he'd turn the tables on Jigsaw in a well-executed ambush. It's tricky, but Dexter might just outmaneuver John Kramer. Art is an absolute maniac who thrives on gore, shock, and sadistic humor. In the first Terrifier, he's essentially human, though unbelievably resilient. Dexter is used to going up against deranged killers, but Art's unpredictability might briefly catch him off guard. Still, Dexter's methodical approach stands strong against Art's chaos. Art relies on brute force, an arsenal of makeshift weapons, and the shock factor. Once Dexter realizes the threat, he'd just keep watch, track Art's pattern of movement, and prepare a tranquilizer that's strong enough to knock him out. Art might put up a horrifying fight, but Dexter usually has the element of surprise in his favor. Now, Sam and Dean usually hunt ghosts, demons, vampires, and all sorts of supernatural entities. Even if Dexter believes they're criminals, based on their rap sheet, let's be real, Sam and Dean come back from the dead more times than you can count. They have literal angels in their corner, plus a trunk full of weapons for every possible monster. Dexter would have no idea what he's stepping into. The Winchesters have taken down beings far stronger than a single vigilante. Even in a normal fight, they're physically trained, highly strategic, and have each other's backs. Dexter might try to isolate one brother, but the other would never be far behind. If Dexter somehow succeeded in taking one out, the other would come for vengeance, times 10. And that's not even counting their cosmic alliances. Mr. Baba Yaga himself, the unstoppable force who outguns entire hit squads without so much as a scratch. John Wick is trained to kill in multiple disciplines: firearms, hand-to-hand combat, tactical driving, you name it. Dexter's standard method is to isolate a target, gather evidence for his code, then tranquilize them in a vulnerable moment. Wick, on the other hand, rarely has vulnerable moments. He's hyper-aware, especially after his dog fiasco. If Dexter tries to go after John, he'd better be prepared for more backup plans than he's ever needed. Realistically, if you put them in a room together, John Wick probably shoots first. Even with Dexter's stealth, Wick's survival instincts are off the charts. Jason is a near unstoppable juggernaut who just keeps coming. He's incredibly strong, shrugs off bullet wounds, and doesn't talk. He just kills. If we're talking pure physical confrontation, Dexter wouldn't last 2 seconds. However, Dexter is cunning. He doesn't rely on brute force. The question is, can you even truly kill Jason? In many of the movies, Jason resurrects or keeps going despite lethal injuries. It's borderline supernatural. Dexter could strap Jason down, but I can imagine Jason ripping free from the restraints. Ultimately, Dexter's success depends on whether Jason is fully mortal. If it's the unstoppable zombie Jason we're used to, that's out of Dexter's league. Freddy kills you in your dreams. That's his entire game. Dexter might try to track him down in the real world, but Freddy's power is strongest once you fall asleep. Dexter could attempt to stay awake, do research, and figure out how to pull Freddy into reality. However, that's a complicated scenario. If Dexter slips up even once, Freddy's got him at his most vulnerable, his nightmares. Granted, Dexter is used to battling his own dark passenger, so maybe he has an advantage in the dream realm. But Freddy's supernatural element is just too much. Once you go to sleep, you're playing by Freddy's rules. Chucky is a possessed doll with the soul of a serial killer. Normally, that's comedic, but we shouldn't underestimate him. He's deceptive, always lurking, and has zero remorse. Dexter's advantage is that he's tall and can handle a tiny doll in a physical struggle. But Chucky has the element of surprise and might pop out with a knife when Dexter's not expecting it. Then again, Dexter's no stranger to surprise kills. After the initial shock, Dexter might just restrain Chucky, chop him up, and call it a day. The real question, can you truly destroy that possessed soul? If Dexter can figure out the voodoo angle or sever the doll's ability to resurrect, it's all over. Otherwise, Chucky might just keep coming back. Norman's kills stem from his fractured psyche. He doesn't have a methodical approach or massive resources. He's stealthy, but only because he's cautious and shy, operating from his motel. Dexter thrives on catching killers who leave patterns, and Norman's pattern is basically tied to Mother. Once Dexter figures out that Norman is the one behind the murders, it's a straightforward infiltration. Dexter might check into the Bates motel, do some poking around, and eventually corner Norman. Norman's not physically imposing or hyper-intelligent. He's cunning in his own twisted way, but it's not enough to match Dexter's skill set. Anton is the ultimate methodical sociopath. He's fearless, incredibly determined, and has a signature captive bolt pistol for dispatching his victims. He also doesn't hesitate. He kills quickly and efficiently, leaving minimal evidence. Dexter would need to be extremely careful not to become the hunted. Anton could sense someone tailing him and turn the tables in a heartbeat. However, Dexter excels at surveillance, and he wouldn't go in guns blazing. He'd observe, find a pattern, and maybe catch Anton at a rare, unguarded moment. The problem is that Anton is always on. He's thorough, unstoppable, and rarely outsmarted. It's close, but I think Dexter stands a chance if he orchestrates the perfect ambush. Cobblepot is cunning, resourceful, and well-connected. He's not a physically imposing threat, but he's a mastermind who always finds a way to protect himself. Dexter's biggest obstacle here is fighting through Penguin's network. Penguin keeps bodyguards, crooked cops, and other criminals around him. One slip, and Dexter gets caught in a crossfire. Still, Dexter can be patient. He's infiltrated drug cartels and manipulated law enforcement before. With time, he could set up Cobblepot's downfall, maybe by creating friction among his henchmen. Ultimately, though, it's not an easy job. Penguin is paranoid and always has contingency plans. Michael Myers is essentially the Shape, an unstoppable killing machine who stalks victims silently. He's not quite on Jason Voorhees' supernatural level, but he's close. Dexter's stealth might help him get a tranquilizer shot in, but if Michael sees Dexter coming, it turns into a horrifying chase. Michael can soak up bullet wounds, stabs, you name it, and still keep going. He's also cunning enough to appear from the shadows at the worst possible time. Dexter would need a meticulously laid trap, likely doping Michael with enough drugs to knock out a bull, and then physically restraining him. Even then, Michael Myers has a knack for resurrecting. Hans Landa is a brilliant detective. He's called the Jew Hunter for a reason in the film, demonstrating terrifying interrogation skills and an uncanny ability to sniff out deception. Dexter is good at covering his tracks, but Hans is the type to figure out Dexter's identity quickly. He might not be a physically imposing presence, but psychologically, Hans is a predator. If Hans suspects Dexter, he'd turn the authorities onto Dexter's trail, possibly outmaneuvering him with cunning negotiations. Could Dexter kill him first? Possibly, if he stays one step ahead and never meets Landa face to face until the kill. It's a psychological chess match. If Dexter thinks he can outwit Hans, he'd better be perfect. One slip, and Hans puts Dexter behind bars or on an execution list. Dahmer was a real-life serial killer, disorganized in many ways, driven by twisted impulses and cannibalistic desires. Dexter would find Dahmer's lack of caution to be child's play. Dahmer lured men back to his apartment, where he committed unspeakable acts. Dexter could easily pose as potential prey, gather enough evidence for the code, and then neutralize Dahmer in a single operation. Dahmer's biggest flaw is that he was messy. He left behind plenty of suspicious details and was nearly caught multiple times. Dexter is precisely the kind of predator who preys on the sloppy, so this is a straightforward one. So there we have it, 21 killers, maniacs, and masterminds. Which matchup would you pay to watch? Who else should be thrown into the mix next time? There is a lot more to come. Attack the subscribe button if you love this stuff and don't want to miss out. And here's a video I suggest you watch now.